Hi, Kate. Can you hear me okay?
I'm trying to block out the mess behind me.
Oh, don't worry about the mess.
Okay.
You look
Good.
very pretty in your red-ish pink. How are you today?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for joining us
Thank you for having me.
here at the Perry community. Let me welcome Kate Rowe-Ham. I'm very excited about this conversation. I'm always excited about a health, sort of fitness, food, all the things that I personally think about a lot. I'm always excited to speak with someone who knows a lot more than I do about any of this. So an extra special thank you. And just sort of a heads up, if as you can see, Maria Luisa is on the call. If anyone has questions or anything like that, usually they pop them into the chat and then I'll just facilitate them for you, unless you prefer to do it yourself.
One quick one to my 6-year-old is outside. He has been told in no circumstances to join us.
He can if he must. It's okay. We don't mind. We don't mind. Well, thank you again and welcome, Kate. And I would love to start by asking you about your new app, Owning Your Menopause. I know that's also a platform name of yours. I'm just curious what the goal was for you in developing this app, and really what was the spark that sort of lit the flame for you to step into this? I know that developing an app it doesn't just happen. It's a lot of work and effort and commitment. And I'm curious, what was the step that said we're doing it?
Wow, I think the fact that I realized, because I was a perimenopausal woman myself, that there was a complete distinct lack of education, awareness, and support for this demographic of women, particularly when it comes to their health and their wellness and fitness and diet. I know that over here in the UK, we're really on it at the moment with HRT, and that's MHT, isn't it? Is it? Yeah, out there. So which is great, but I do feel that the conversation, the pendulum has gone from, here in terms of HRT not being great for you because of the Women's Health Study in 2002, straight over to this other side of where it seems to be bandied about at the moment as kind of like a magic fix. But that's kind of where we are now. But rewind to, I guess, I'm 46, so about 4 years ago, I had Rupert, who was 2. I was an older mum, I guess, as people see it these days. And I was really struggling with my own fitness and some really debilitating symptoms, night sweats, incredible anxiety, heart palpitations, and weirdly incredible feelings of like loneliness in what was a really chaotic, busy life. And just didn't feel like myself. And I didn't really understand. And I saw doctors and went to doctors, and I was a really fit person. I was training, I was doing a lot of HIIT, and I was teaching other women, and I couldn't kind of understand. I had joint aches and pains. So it was a really confusing time. To kind of cut a long story short, we were in lockdown, so it was very difficult. So this is no fault of the medical side over here, although GPs aren't necessarily brilliant at the moment at kind of diagnosing perimenopause. I was sent for 2 ECGs, some chest x-rays. I was given an asthma test, despite the fact that I was running like half marathons in lockdown. And then I was diagnosed with depression. And again, I having had mental health issues in the past, a diagnosis of depression isn't something that terrifies me, and it's not something to be ashamed of. But I knew it was different from the way I had felt before. So I ended up having to kind of, I guess, do my own research and go down a route of what is this, and came across private doctors, and eventually got myself a diagnosis of perimenopause. But when I went, and it was great, and I was offered HRT, which actually I sat and looked at for 3 months because I was still slightly terrified of taking it, I thought, how can I help myself here? Like, what can I do to make myself strong from the inside out? What am I doing training wise? Am I doing something wrong? How am I fueling my workouts? And essentially I spent sort of 2 years working out what it was, along with a lot of self-acceptance, that women need at this time in order to fulfill their fitness potential. And I did a million different things, and this opportunity came to create an app and get a subscription. And because I've been doing a lot of free stuff, and I just felt that to have a sense of credibility and to be able to have a little bit more communication with women that needed help, I had to make it a little bit more viable. And so that is what I created, and that launched in May this year. And it's doing really well, and I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Congratulations on it. I so appreciate what you said about sort of the pendulum swing, if you will. I think about this a lot, that I wasn't aware of that 2002 women's study prior to a couple of years ago. And I knew that my mother had been on hormone replacement or menopause hormonal treatment for 10 years and then was abruptly taken off. And this was, many years ago, when there wasn't a lot of chatter about what was happening during this season of life anyway. And reflecting back, I think it's obviously that was a time of such disservice for so many women, but as you mentioned, and what you're offering is this piece in the middle, which I really think is actually sort of like, it's actually the thread that just should kind of be there anyway, meaning sort of lifestyle practices that are in your best interest anyway, sort of regardless of where you are on your hormonal path.
I mean, completely. And I think, Rachel, you're right. You touch on a really good point, because actually it's about early intervention, and it's about understanding that actually our bone mass reaches its peak at the age of 30.
Right.
So what we do previously, before we are 30, is going to have a significant impact on how we age and we go through the menopause, and what our susceptibility is to the onset of things like osteopenia or osteoporosis. And actually it is interesting, because I do have a diagnosis of osteopenia in both my hips, and that is because I had a very colorful time, perhaps before my 30s. I didn't lift weights. I think this generation of women that we are seeing going through the menopause at the moment were very much cardio bunnies.
Mm-hmm.
We were told that was the way, and I do love it. I do love now we are seeing younger girls getting into lifting, and that is great. And what would be lovely is if they understood that it was not necessarily for the aesthetics, which I think still is very much a thing, but actually how brilliant they are in doing that, because they are giving themselves a much better chance of offsetting things like osteopenia, osteoporosis, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, all of these things that we see kind of elevating now in this sort of perimenopausal, menopausal generation of women.
Yeah. And just to piggyback off of what you said, Kate, that I think is so important is that, and I've seen things that you have shared about this, that not everyone can take hormones. Not everyone might want to take hormones. And there is indeed this really positive, effective thing that happens when you're paying attention to all of this lifestyle stuff. And so you've sort of consolidated it in this app, which is wonderful. Kate, if you wouldn't mind, if I could just take you back a little bit, because this really struck me in your story. And I don't remember exactly where I read that you had shared that you may have been sitting on the edge of your bed or in bed, and it was like day 5 of this sort of episode, really, of feeling rather blue. And you just mentioned that the diagnosis of depression didn't frighten you. That's something that you had bouts with in your life. But I think the reason I wanted to ask about it is because I feel like the mental health part is still one that sort of jars women and maybe keeps them from thinking that they may be in perimenopause. And when in fact, when we look back so often, I also have a history of depressive episodes, but it was this anxiety that was like, woo, just really dialed up when I was in my early 40s that actually brought me to the doctor that gave me this diagnosis. So your story really touched me. And I thought, if you wouldn't mind just sharing a bit more about that, it could be so helpful.
No, not at all. And I think it's really key to share. I mean, essentially my anxiety got so bad that every night, I mean, you know, by night 5, night 6, I was literally sat on the end of my bed saying to my husband, if I die, you know, when they find my body in the morning or whatever it may be, tell them it was my heart, because these heart palpitations were properly terrifying. And I would actually kind of try and fall asleep in the recovery position and try and find ways of helping it. But, you know, when you're in that mindset and you're terrified, your anxiety gets, you know, a lot worse. And not knowing what it was at the time was terrifying, because I thought that I perhaps had some heart issue. I thought maybe with this breathing, because I mean, I was unable to even pretty much have a conversation, Rachel, at one point, because I would have to stop and like breathe, you know, and I'm quite a kind of like person anyway. So it was really frustrating. And it was when my kids even started saying to me, Mom, you're doing that breathing thing again. You know, because I couldn't finish the end of my sentences. And I continually felt like I had just this ball just sat here in my throat. And it was terrifying. It was disturbing. And like I said, I wasn't ashamed of the depression, but I think that, you know, as women, we just soldier on. We're almost too scared to maybe say there's something wrong because we're too terrified to get a diagnosis. But obviously getting a diagnosis of anything is really important to get that, if it is something other than menopause, to make sure that you get the best possible medical care early on. I think the other thing, Rachel, that you touched on, where you were saying, you know, the sort of slight fear behind a diagnosis of perimenopause. The other thing for me was not that my husband, well, two prongs here, not that my husband was dismissive, but I think because leading up to that, I had various ailments and things that I was unsure of. And I think that happens to a lot of us. He was, oh, what is it now? You know, oh, it's another thing. And so by him being slightly dismissive, I was like, oh my God, am I being a hypochondriac? And it's not. I think we hit this age, in this midlife age, where everybody is so valuable to us. Our kids are growing up. We're caring a lot of the time for elderly or sick parents. And actually, I was caring for my dad not long after my diagnosis, that we begin to feel that we are so needed. So we don't want to die because we have all this, everything to look after. What happens when we're gone? Who's going to do everything? Because that's what we do. And so it's just all of this fear. And then I think on the other side it's the fear of saying to my husband, I am perimenopausal, because the connotations behind a menopausal woman are that she's dried up and, you know, she's no good to anybody. You know, and we hear doctors talk about the whole purpose of our cycle and ovulation and this horny feeling we get, you know, mid-cycle, is to have babies, and all that's finishing. And it's kind of like, wow, is my husband going to find me attractive anymore? And so I think we have so much coming at us from so many different places. It's no wonder that anxiety and you know, sort of bouts of depression show up at this time, especially with that decline of estrogen. And I think what is really important is like we're saying, is this early education and this early awareness, because I am stronger and fitter and freer than I have ever been in my whole entire life at 46. And only 4 years ago, I thought I had nothing left to give. And those are the stories, and those are the messages, and that's what women need to hear and understand. But it's difficult, isn't it? Because, you know, at 35, if I'd have heard someone say this, I'd have been whatever. You know, just don't listen until we're there.
Oh no, absolutely. And I just want to sidebar for a moment. I thank you for sharing all that you just did, and specifically this piece about, or in this moment specifically this piece about sort of the fear or concern about sharing with your husband what a doctor might have said, because we hear a lot sort of the other end of that, which is you know, our struggles with with sort of libido or, you know, not feeling like it or it being painful. Like there's a lot of discussion around that, but there is this component of, well, if I share this and what will that mean sort of within the construct of my relationship? And that's a whole other piece we can get into later, but I do appreciate your bringing that up. Okay. So Kate, so you had been this cardio monster for many years, and that's like what you did, like so many of us. And then when did you, becoming an instructor is a whole other thing. And when did that happen?
So funny enough, that had happened before. So I was already qualified. So I actually qualified when I was 40, when I had my third child. Because if I rewind slightly, and again, it's something I'm very honest about, sort of within my bouts of depression, I'd had disordered eating growing up. I had 4 miscarriages before I had Rupert. So I felt to myself, again, I probably hadn't, that I'd put on a bit of weight. And I really struggled to lose the baby weight. It'd been fairly easy with 1 and 2. And again, I was older and I couldn't find anybody that I could connect with and resonated with. I was a busy mum, an older mum, as it were, with a child, and I live in the middle of nowhere. And how do I lose this weight? How do I feel strong again? And I started following Joe Wicks, funnily enough, the body coach. I'm sure you guys know him over there, but it was the TV workouts. And I was like, there's this young guy, he's 30. He doesn't understand, you know, my hormones, and that's no disrespect to him. He's brilliant. What do I do? And I just couldn't find anybody. And I've always liked fitness. Like I've always enjoyed it, possibly for the wrong reasons. You know, it's always been an aesthetic thing for me. But I thought, let's just do it. Let's go for it. And so I set about qualifying. So qualified literally just before my 40th birthday, sort of, or just after my 40th birthday. And I started off, actually my kind of name was HIT for life. So I was all about the HIT. I was all about the short bursts of workouts, busy mum, get it done, quick. But it just didn't work. It didn't work. And I think I was making terrible lifestyle choices as well, which I'm happy to talk to you about.
Yeah.
And so I then started to just do my research. I did an amazing course with Bowel Education, which is on like pro-age women. And the women I read, lovely Dr. Stacey Sims Burke, you know, Raw. I'd come across obviously Amanda Thebe, who'd written her book, Apocalypse, and began to see more and more the benefits of strength training. Then I went down that route, and that was when I discovered that actually, you know, I would talk to my friends around me and I'd be like, you know, why are we're pounding the pavement, so we're working out for hours on end, or we're doing HIT and we're putting so much stress on our bodies, you know, and then finding out that obviously as we're going through menopause, our estrogen declines, our cortisol rises, HIT inevitably makes our cortisol rise even further, and then those symptoms and lack of sleep, cortisol rises, and actually what a cortisol does is it essentially puts you into adrenal fatigue, and you then can store a little bit more visceral fat. So I basically set about getting myself a set of dumbbells, and it went from there, and I haven't looked back. And so I encourage women to lift weights and to go heavy with their weights, and to tell them they're not going to bulk. And I would say that it has transformed the way I look at exercise, the way I feel about myself. In terms of like a body transformation and being lean and whatever, that is now no longer a priority for me. So my priority is making sure I have strong muscles and strong bones and a good heart, and my mental health is benefiting from what I'm doing. You know, the aesthetics and how we look is a byproduct of all of that. And, you know, I talk a lot about future-proofing our bodies. It is very difficult for women if they have had this potential inevitable weight gain to reframe, you know, how we see fitness. And I understand the struggles many women will have when they look in the mirror and their body shape has changed. That's not to say don't make fat loss your goal, because again, it's really important to take on board that if you are carrying more weight than you should, you are putting yourself at risk of type 2 diabetes and heart disease, and that is something to address. But to actually go in and focus on lifting weights for all the other benefits, as I say, the weight will come off as a nice little happy
Yeah.
extra. But at the same time, you're feeling strong, and it's about feeling mentally and physically strong.
You know, I think, Kate, one of the things that so resonates for people with about you is that there is this real honesty in the maybe the grayer area, if you will. So I think just like there's this sort of very dogmatic discussion around HRT, there is also this sort of like midlife, you know, take back bodily agency, and it doesn't matter our size, and we're, you know, throwing off the shackles of the patriarchy and all of that, which is all valid and really important for each of us individually to kind of wrestle with over time. And I think that for many women, there is sometimes a lack of honesty about, well, I actually am really not happy with how I am aesthetically looking right now, or I just don't feel myself. I don't feel right in my own body anymore. And then it becomes a little bit like, I almost feel in conversations I've had that some women almost feel shamed about wanting to say, actually, I really would like to lose 10 pounds. And so I feel like that's sort of coming out of your work, that this exists, this place, and there are things we can do something about it.
Like it is. And actually I had a really interesting conversation with someone about this the other day, because I am totally into self-love and self-care. But the bottom line is that for some people that isn't enough, and that is okay, you know. It really is. And it's said, especially if they are putting themselves at a higher risk of type 2 diabetes or heart disease. You know, postmenopausally now, the biggest killer of women is heart disease. So why would we not want to look after ourselves? And also, it's okay to want to look good, but my ethos is do the exercise and do that bit. So the strength benefits and the looking good bit will just come naturally. And actually, with that strength of the lifting weights and all of that sort of stuff, you will build confidence. And I think that that's what it is for a lot of women, is that we lose our confidence when we lose our shape. And you can say it to anyone, you know, a million times, don't worry, but the bottom line is somebody is still going to worry about that, and everybody's feelings are valid, as you pointed out, and that's okay. The most important thing to mention, I think, is that when women do find themselves in that situation, is they go back to that sort of, again, this generation of women who have been brought up, you know, that carbs are our enemy and we have to really restrict our eating. And so what I end up with is a lot of clients who are really restricting their diet, and they're not working out correctly. And actually that then creates a negative impact on our body. Again, it creates more stress, and the chances are you will not reach your goal, and you will put on weight. And it's been a massive process for me too, Rich. I mean, I used to not really eat breakfast. I used to do that thing which loads of women do, probably not eat really well, and then at like 3 o'clock you're really hungry, and then you could literally eat the whole
everything.
And you know, now I force myself to have a really good, lovely breakfast with loads of protein. Same thing at lunch, same thing at supper. As you know, I did also give up alcohol for
I wanted to talk to you about that.
18 months. I've started to have the odd glass of wine, more because I wanted to scratch the itch. I don't really enjoy it, to be honest with you, so it's neither here nor there. That made a massive impact on my training, because again, I was your typical midlife and menopausal woman who at 5 o'clock would want to have a glass of wine because she was stressed, she was anxious, would have that wine, and then you eat the crisps, and you know, by the time supper comes, you're actually full,
right?
And then you can get up and you can work out. The reality is, and it's the most annoying saying in the world, is you can't out train a bad diet. And that is fact.
Kate, I want to get back to the eating thing in a moment. I just wanted to mention that Maria Luisa, who's on the call, chimed in and said, I rarely admit I want to lose a few pounds because of being misunderstood or judged. So I do think there's a deeper conversation to have around this little piece that lives in the middle, where I think most people, most women are sort of inhabiting this space. And it can be a challenge, but I thank you for sharing what you did. Okay. I just want to get into fitness itself for a bit. So tell us about, HIIT is not our friend in the way that we may have been doing it. Certainly sort of bringing this 1980s mentality into fitness today. I think most of us would think HIIT is the thing to do, 45 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And that's a no. However, it does exist on your app. So I'd love it if you could take us through what you know to be true for women in this season in terms of how we should be moving and how we should not be moving.
No, it's a really interesting one, because obviously if you've always been doing HIIT and you work out and you're fit and you're healthy, it is something that you can still do. It is very heavy on your joints. And again, it does raise your cortisol levels, but it has a place. And this is the thing, it is a good, effective, efficient, quick workout. So I have it on the app once a week, because I think it is a lovely thing to include, and people do enjoy it. And I don't want to take away things that people enjoy, because obviously exercise is about the enjoyment. But essentially, it's not really serving that purpose of building that lean muscle and that strength that we want to get by lifting weights. It's also really important to remember that kind of HIIT was invented, or it came about as a blanket prescription for exercise. So they weren't taking into account, when we talk about HIIT, the perimenopausal or the menopausal woman. You've got athletes, you've got younger women who are high in estrogen doing these workouts. So it really has its place, and it's really, really suitable. I just totally believe that as we are coming into this later phase in life, it can be really hard. And actually, I've seen many women come to me saying that they have suffered from crippling joint pain from doing HIIT workouts. So it's just about listening to your body. I don't want women to stop doing it, but I would just say, if you are doing it 3 or 4 times a week, you would be best off, switching 1 or 2 of those sessions out for some weights. So that's kind of what we focus on in the app. So, essentially we do weights 3 times a week, and then there is 1 HIIT workout on a Tuesday. And again, the reason that we lift weights is because of the significant benefits it has on our bone health. And we, as I said, we've already said about our bone health being maximized at the age of 30. Our muscle health also declines at around about the age of 35. So we begin to lose muscle mass. Now, obviously, your muscles are going to support your body. They support your joints. So it's really important that we build muscle. And again, if we want to come to that weight side of it, the more muscle we have, the more fat, calories we will burn. Because obviously the more muscle you have, the body is using more of those calories to facilitate those muscles. And so by default, again, it's a really good way for fat loss. And HIIT won't allow you to progress, as it were. You'll come to a time when you just plateau, and you'll be thinking, why am I not making gains? And that's the time I often see women when they're like, I haven't changed my routine, but nothing's working. And I'll be like, okay, so what is it you're doing? And I'm doing HIIT 5 times a week. And it's because they're not adding any resistance,
And I mentioned something just from a personal perspective here, or experience. I guess during COVID, wasn't able to get to the gym, and I thought, oh, this is great. I'm home. I didn't have any weights really to speak of at home, but I thought, oh, I can get into this HIIT thing now, and I'll just work out for like 10 minutes and I'll do it and I'll feel great. And what I discovered was that I was never able, or I didn't really understand how hard you need to push yourself through that 20 seconds or 30 seconds or 45 seconds of intense work before a rest seconds of period of time. So I was like pretty lazily working out for 10 minutes. And then I would be, I'd say, okay, I'm done. My workout's done. I'm sure I never even broke a sweat, but it was so misunderstood. And I gain weight very quickly and easily. And it was radically different when I was able to sort of get back into the gym and, really lift. So I mention that a lot to people sort of anecdotally, if a friend or someone says to me, oh, I'm going to start doing this HIIT thing. And I sort of remind them that you really do need to push in order for it to be effective. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Or was I making it up?
No, you really do. Because it's like there's Tabata as well, isn't there? Which is 20 seconds and 10 seconds. And that's like an 8-minute workout. And so you really have to go for it to make it work. But I think, so many people are scared to do the weight training because they feel they're going to bulk.
Yeah.
I think also another misconception is when you add weights that you think you're going to be at the gym for a really long time. But it's not, it's actually, or at home, but it's actually a really efficient way to work out if you, again, lift heavier weights. Because, we do see a lot of people, they're sort of there with their weights and they're 20 bicep curls.
Yeah.
It's like, that's really not going to be doing anything for you. And if you're going to do 20 bicep curls, then you're going to be there for a very long time.
Yeah.
Pick up a good heavy weight. You can do 8 to 10 reps. A good rep range is like 8 to 15.
Yes, I saw that. I learned that from you, and it's changed my gym experience. I really like it. It's very efficient and effective. But can you talk about the weight, the heaviness of weights a bit?
So it's really, I have to be really mindful because obviously I'm now lifting a lot heavier, but I think what's really important for any woman to know is that kind of 18 months ago, 2 years ago, I wasn't really lifting. So it's been transformative and it's a gradual process as well. So it's really important, obviously, when you lift weights, that you have the correct form and that you do it gradually, because obviously what we're doing when we lift weights is we're slightly tearing the muscle. Everyone's like, you tear the muscle.
Yeah.
You tear it, and then it's in that repairing process that it's building itself back up to create, this nice shape and that lean muscle. So I have a beginner's program actually on my app, which uses 3 kg and 5 kg weights. So that's like £6 maybe and £10 weights. I think
so. Yes.
Over there. And it's a really in-depth, step-by-step kind of 4-week program to getting you to lift. And then what I hope is that after that, they could either repeat that with heavier weights or they can come and join the live workouts. It's totally up to them where they want to go. But the most important thing when we begin to lift is the correct form, because obviously, again, at this age, we are possibly more susceptible to injury. So it's just making sure that we've got that correctly. But again, if we lift weights, we are also preventing injury because we are making our bodies a lot stronger, and actually I've done a post today about core and abs. We always get a little bit carried away with what are abs, and actually abs and core are 2 very different things. And in having a lovely strong core, which you can have and still have a lovely spongy stomach, you're going to be able to lift heavier. And so coming to your question of lifting heavier, obviously our lower body is predominantly a little bit stronger than our upper body. And I hear so many women saying, but I'm so weak in my upper body, I'm so weak. But this is the most incredible opportunity then to build that strength. And what I love is the feedback that I get from so many women who, message me in the morning and go, I went to 8 kg today, or, and they're really proud of themselves.
Sure.
And so they've left home feeling strong and good. So that the whole point in lifting heavier is that you won't plateau at any point. So you're always building strength and you're always building, that lean muscle and, repairing bones and always building bones. So that is the whole ethos behind lifting weights. Yeah.
I have a question. I'm raising my hand. 2 things. One is, when do you know that it's time to increase your weight? And there are days, I think, for women in perimenopause and menopause that you are just, no matter all the things that you're doing consistently, you just are not feeling up to snuff in the gym. Is it bad or detrimental or sort of hindering your progress to just do less that day in the gym?
No, never. So this is the other thing, and I love it, Rachel. You literally read me like a book.
Oh,
Um,
goody.
that's the other thing I see, is that women don't rest enough. We're so terrified that if we miss a day, we're going, it's all going to go wrong, and what am I going to do? And no, so I really try and encourage people to have 2 rest days, and that can be an active rest day. So you could go for a walk. I always think you should definitely move every day. You know, when I say rest day, it doesn't just mean sit down on the sofa and kind of do nothing and watch Netflix. You know, yoga, Pilates, and that's not taking away from yoga and Pilates as a good way to strength train. But, you know, it for me, and the way that I've worked it on my app, it's seen as an active rest day. So on Saturday mornings, we do Pilates, and on Wednesday evening, Paravi does yoga. And so essentially, you know, that's all. But actually on Sunday night, we have mindfulness.
Yes.
So something that's really important to bring in is it's not just always about the workouts, it's about the whole package. As you've just said, you know, on a day when you've had, or a night, sorry, when you've had really little sleep, you might have been up, you might feel anxious. It's often best to miss that workout day, switch it out for something that's a little bit kinder to yourself, a little bit gentler on the body, and then just change it around and come back to it when you're more focused. And equally on that point as well, for a lot of women going through menopause, perimenopause, they might have irregular cycles. So they might not know when they're about to have their periods,
Right.
you know, and so they'll go 1 week to the gym and they'll be like, yeah, I
Yeah.
cranked it all out. It was the best day ever.
Yeah.
And then go back the next week and they can barely, like you say, either walk in the door or open the door. And then it's like, oh my God, I'm not building strength. It's all gone to pot. And we're so hard on ourselves as women. It's like, there's one thing goes wrong and it's like, this is it. And it will normally be followed, you know, 2 or 3 days later, they'll have their period and they'll be like, ah, okay, that was it. And then again, they can build that strength again. So, you know, a lot of it again is I think to become really intuitive and to really listen to what your body is telling you, and to not push through on those days when you can't, but just to go, okay, park it and move on and come back.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up the mindfulness day as well, because I felt that you're including that in your program was so critically important, and really sort of building it in, this idea that we are these whole beings and we need to dial down some days purposefully. And so having that day where this is what's done is, I think, really sort of helping us become more intuitive about self-care, which I really loved. It was that
amazing. She's an amazing
yeah.
breathwork specialist, and she really knows her stuff. And so it's a great thing on a Sunday night just to have that, just to reframe the week ahead and reset, you know, your intentions. We live such busy lives, and you know, it's very easy, again, I think, to say that we need to do this mindfulness and we need to have calm. And I know a lot of people go, but I can't find the time for calm.
Right.
You know, and again, that puts more pressure. But it literally could be even just 3 minutes, you know, just breath work in and out, and just taking, whenever there is an opportunity, a quiet moment to yourself in the day. And if you are given these tools and these techniques and how to use it, you can find, you know, even if you're going off to the loo, you know, you can have a quick moment of mindfulness. Then if you're working in a busy space, you know, it's about giving you tips and techniques and tools to kind of manage this period holistically.
Yeah, I love that. I really do think it's helpful to women on your platform to sort of understand what it means, what it looks like in action, to become more intuitive, to take special care of your physical body, your mental health, your spiritual health. I love that. Can we go back for a few moments to food and nutrition? You mentioned that you had disordered eating. This is so common for women, and certainly in this community. I did a post not too long ago about disordered eating, or sort of like this hyper focus on healthy eating. And I think, you know, again, whatever age we are, but in midlife or during this season of life where our bodies sort of feel like they've gotten away from us, we want to corral them by practicing habits we know are not in our best interest, but they probably are things we're familiar with, right? Would you speak a bit about your experience and sort of how doing the work that you do now has created something new for you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm not, obviously really important to say that I'm not a registered nutrition. I did nutrition alongside my
Sure.
my training. And a lot of what, again, I've learned is with the nutritionist. We have a nutritionist obviously on the platform, again, so that we've got proper guidance there. But again, yeah, for me, so it was always a weight thing. And I think what happens by the time we're in midlife is, if I'm honest with you, is we're so confused about how to eat. You know, there are so many diets out there. You've got keto, low fat, you know, cut your carbs, intermittent fasting, juicing, and everyone's saying, do this, do this, do this. And at the end of the day, you're like, which one do I do? And you try all of them. And I think what a lot of women I see end up is just on this like yo-yo pattern as well. So they kind of, you know, Christmas is coming and you eat a lot, and then you do your January detox, and then, you know, you really good maybe February, March, and then there's sort of a half term and kids are on holiday. And so what I want women to do is to find a way where for 365 days of the year, they are eating really well. It's a really difficult thing to do. And I would say that for me, I've been really mindful of my eating over the last 4 years, but prior to that, you know, it's been all over the place. And for me, it was really cutting carbs and cutting out massive food groups. And what I know now is, instead of looking at cutting out our food groups, look at what we can add to our plate. And you know, we do these little boosts and these little resets in the app. We've got one coming up actually at the end of the month, sort of a 7-day mind body boost before Christmas period starts. And you know, it's things like, make sure you've got 30 different colorful or eat 30 different foods throughout that week. What are you going to add? And how is that plate going to look? Protein again with every meal. And it's about encouraging women to stop this mindless snacking as well, that I think a lot of us get into, because we don't eat and then we get hungry, and you know, our insulin levels are all over the place, our body craves food, and we eat the wrong food and we make the wrong choices. So again, it's sort of encouraging women to have these 3 wholesome meals with 4 to 5 hours in between. And for somebody like me who's terrible at grazing, that's really good, because often I'd graze throughout the day and then I'd get to supper and then I wouldn't really want supper, and so then I wouldn't really have supper, and then you wake up the next morning and you're really, really hungry.
Right.
You know, and I think the thing around food as well is, it's really important to find out what works for you, because I know there's a lot of stuff again at the moment about intermittent fasting. Whilst that can be really good for some women, it can trigger disordered eating again in people that have had disordered eating. And I think any place where you are having to monitor your food or look at what you're eating just makes you so aware of everything. You know, the bottom line, if I'm honest, is it is calories in versus calories out. We can't deny that. You know, if you're eating more than you are expanding, you will put on weight. But I think essentially we all know what we should be eating. It's just the fact that we have to do it and we don't necessarily want to do it. But you know, 80-20 and a good balance, I think, is really, really key. And like I said, it's taken me a really long time to get there. I don't get it right all the time. And I think the other thing to say to people is, if you do have a day where you start eating rubbish early on in the day, don't then self-sabotage and just eat like that for the rest of the day. That's fine. You had a bag of crisps, you had a bar of chocolate. Great. That was a lovely treat for the day. Go home and have a lovely, healthy, wholesome soup with some sourdough bread, or, you know, something nourishing. And don't look at it as having that to combat that. You're not playing one thing against the other. You've eaten it and you enjoyed it, and that's lovely. But now go and have that nice, wholesome meal that's actually just going to be better for you, full stop. So it's about talking to yourself and, you know, allowing yourself to, I think, kind of understand that you need to nourish your body. And you know, this sort of starvation thing that we think works just doesn't work. I
thank you, Kate. I think also what you said initially is just so critical, that we get to this time and we don't know what to eat. And it shouldn't seem that it is so complicated, but it has become so complicated for us after many, many years of disordered thinking, or trying to learn to do the right thing and what that looks like. And then, of course, there's so many options and a lot of noise sort of coming at us, and essentially we want something that's gonna work quickly, right? Which I think, but the important thing, as it is in fitness, that you shared so well, is that it's consistency, right? It's just sort of finding what works for you.
And that's
And
why
sticking
I
with
often
it.
say as well, kind of like with the fitness side, we're really good at goal setting and talking about goals, but unless you're like running a marathon or doing a challenge where you've got like an end point, for me, fitness, there is no end point.
Yeah.
And if you go, okay, I want to lose 10 pounds by this time, and you don't, the likelihood is you will then not carry on with whatever it is you're doing, because what you've done is you've set kind of unachievable, unrealistic expectations on yourself. However, if you say, I do want to lose 10 pounds, but I'm going to try and work on my sleep and eat better, the chances are that in 2 to 3 months, which is a good window, 4 months to lose that weight, you will lose that weight. And then you can carry on because you found a love of exercise for something else. Because what happens when you reach that 10 pounds? Then what?
Right.
You reach your goal weight. Where do you go? You often think, okay, well, that's great, I've done that.
Yeah,
I
I'm
know,
done.
done.
Yeah.
And your fitness isn't done. Your fitness should never be done. There's that amazing woman, Train with Joan McDonald.
Yes, yes.
Oh my
70
God.
something, 80 now.
75. I
Yeah.
love her. She's a
Yeah.
massive inspiration.
Mhm.
And that for me is a goal that, at 75. And I think that is the really important thing, as well as look 30 years ahead. Look now 30 years ahead. Who do you want to be? What person are you going to be? Are you again, we can't mitigate any diseases that might happen, but we can give ourselves the best fighting chance by exercising and eating well at the time that we've got now. And I definitely want to be like Joan when I'm 75, and I want to be running around after my grandchildren, and living my best life.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. I think about that a lot as well, sort of the idea of what's your why. And my first why is always that I want to be around and active and available and able to keep up with future grandchildren. So I completely get that. Kate, I know we're running short on time. I just have a couple of more questions, if that's okay. I hope your 6-year-old is doing.
He's probably eating chocolate and crisps. Who knows? He's probably on the iPad.
Okay, I hope he's okay. Thank him for us. I wanted to ask you about alcohol, and I wanted to ask first, though, just sort of to close the loop on fitness. What are some common mistakes that women make regarding fitness? And you sort of, it's threaded throughout. I think you talked about sort of pounding the pavement, and this high intensity cardio might be a mistake, or not lifting heavy enough, and just sort of carrying on with multiple reps. Is there anything else that has stood out to you?
I think just that a lot of people are afraid because they don't know where to start, and they don't know how to start. And there are so many barriers when we reach this phase. And again, it could be pelvic floor issues. It could be things that people don't want to talk about. So, there are a lot of issues surrounding it. And I think that a lot of the reason that some people might not start is because of fear. They don't know how to start, and loss of confidence. But in terms of mistakes, I think it is setting massively unrealistic goals on ourselves, and also comparison.
Oof,
and that will always
that's a good one.
We could sit here and talk about that forever, but I get quite emotional when I talk about this, but you are unique, right? And if you think about what it took for you to be here, for your mom and your dad and the sperm and the egg and all those sperms and all those eggs, you were chosen and you were put here for a purpose, and you are the way you are for that reason. There is nobody like you. So don't compare yourself to anybody else. And also, if you are, somebody else might be comparing themselves to you. They might want to be how you are. And I we're so guilty of it. We all have this access to social media, and there are some amazingly, sculpted women out there in their 40s and their 50s and their 60s. Don't compare yourself. They've got great genes, or there's something going on behind the scenes,
Yeah.
but also equally, don't take away how hard they're working. Because I know
Sure.
recently we had lovely Jennifer Aniston and Nicole Kidman. Now that's really hard. It's unrealistic for a lot of us, but they work hard to look that good. I would never take that away from them. The fact is, I'm 5'3". I'm never going to look like Nicole Kidman, and I don't really want to. It's that sort of thing. I think that would be the mistake I make, is comparison.
Wow, I love that. Thank you. Alcohol.
Yeah.
You decided to be sober over a year ago, and you mentioned earlier that you sort of now indifferent, but you'll have a glass here or there. What was the trigger for you in sobriety, in choosing?
I was drinking too much. I'll be completely honest. I was drinking way too much. For me, alcohol has always been my coping mechanism, my way to, I've and he's coming. It didn't last long.
Oh, no, it was good. It was really long.
Bad day, have a drink. Celebration, have a drink. My kids have driven me mad, have a drink. And actually, if I'm honest with you, I think the UK, I don't know, you may disagree, we have a terrible drinking culture over here. Like, it really is it's a big thing.
Okay.
And there's sort of this mummy wine drinking culture. I don't know whether that happens over there as well.
That's certainly in my neighborhood. I don't know about the whole country.
I found out in like lockdown that we'd have this like WhatsApp group, and it'd be like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we'd be like, oh, have you had a drink yet? Just making sure that everybody was drinking with you. And I don't have an off button. I'm an all or nothing kind of girl, and I was definitely drinking too much. My dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in September 2020. My sister lives in Kenya. She came over, and she likes her wine, and I just basically found that kind of from October 2020 until like December 2020, I was just drinking too much, and I just wasn't functioning properly. I wasn't present in my home. My fitness was terrible. I felt like I was living a lie. I was showing up and working out and teaching people, feeling like rubbish, to be honest with you. So actually, I was really grateful when New Year came round, because I was like, right, I'm going to do dry January. Well, I was one of these people that I talk about. I'm going to do dry January. And then I was like, okay, I've done dry January. Someone challenged me to do dry February. So I did dry February, and we were still in lockdown. And then I was like, right, well, I'll do till June the 21st, because we've got a big party on June the 21st, and we were still locked down. And I just began to really notice the changes in my skin, in my sleep, in my workouts, in my energy, in my presence. And I didn't really miss it. So I was like, well, that's it. So I did a year, and I'd never put a set goal on it. And then I was away in the summer, and I was like, I just want to see what it was about. I think I said this to someone last night. For me, the drinking thing wasn't that I was going to let anybody else down. So it wasn't like, oh my God, she's had a drink, she needs to go to rehab. For me, it was a personal choice, and because it is really, it's not great for us, as we know. And I probably had like 3 glasses of wine since then. I can kind of take it or leave it. It didn't taste very nice, and I felt like rubbish for about a week. So it the sugar content of it is really not great for us, for our insulin levels. And we hear it all the time from menopausal women saying, I can't have one drink now because I feel so terrible. So actually, terrible after one, just don't have it. I try to encourage people to have this period of sobriety, for 30 days and feel the benefits. And a lot of people have carried on.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Finally, I see on your platform this community that you are building and making space for. You have chats. I think it's called the Lounge. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, so the Lounge is where we go live, and I come in and I check in with everybody, probably quite similar to what you guys do. That's not saved anywhere, so that someone can come in and cry and let themselves go. So that's not saved. And then we have the text chat in the community section, which I am working on, I want that to be a little bit more efficient and a little bit more personal. But people can email me and I will always get back to them. But essentially, yes, there are, you know, check-in chats. There's the sober chat. You can see this person clicking here.
Yes, I see.
There's breast cancer. And then also what happens in that community is we have, so every month we have Dr. Katie or Naomi Potter comes in, actually now quarterly, and they can come in and live like this and ask any questions they like. And that's the same with the nutrition, and also the sleep clinic as well, because we have Natalie, who's a sleep expert.
So you offer all of these things, and I just wondered, I think it's wonderful that you do. I think more than anything, what women in this season of life need and really sort of are fulfilled by. But I'm wondering what it's given you as the constructor of all of this, and the person who has carved out space for so many women. What has it done for you?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. What has it done for me? I think it's allowed myself to be more me, and to be more vulnerable and honest and open. And I love helping people. I don't know. I don't want people to suffer the way I did. I don't want my kids to suffer the way I did. And I think it's amazing the power of women supporting women. And it's funny you say kind of what has it given me? I guess it's given me a lot of friendships as well. Like the women I train, even though there's quite a lot of 100 of them, I feel like there's a real sense of camaraderie, and I genuinely value each and every one of them. And I guess I feel really fulfilled. Like I just feel like in a really happy place. It's given me that thing that I want every woman to know, is that life really can begin now, and it's never too late. You know, 4 years ago I didn't want to be here, and you know, 4 years on, it's brilliant.
Oh, thank you so much, Kate. That's a beautiful place to stop our wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. Thank your son for sort of allowing us to take your attention for this last hour. We can find you on Instagram, on your platform, Owning Your Menopause.
Yes, so Owning Your Menopause, that's where all of the Owning Your Menopause, where all the Owning Your Menopause app stuff happens. And then the KateRH_fitness is where I overshare
Everything. Yeah, you do. It's wonderful. We're all lucky to have you. Thank you. Maria Luisa says, love this so much. Thank you so much, Kate. I hope to speak to you again, maybe next year.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Be well.